Hi everyone, welcome to Abuse on Men. I'm joined by Hattie. This is the third video in the series of comparing abuse on women versus abuse on men and the experiences that we both faced at the hands of our abusive exes. Thanks Hattie for joining. If you haven't seen already, this is the three videos are about. The first video is about getting into an abusive relationship. Second video is about why staying in an abusive relationship, and the third video is about getting out of the abusive relationship. So we'll cover the peak of the abuse and what happened, what made us want to get out. And then how exactly we got out, and maybe a little bit on the recovery. But let's just dive straight in and talk about the peak and obviously our experiences were very different, Hattie, in terms of length and realization. But perhaps you can start with sort of that awakening as such.
Yeah, thanks. It was exactly an awakening. It was for me, it was a very sudden awakening. I went within the space of about 3 days to discovering the scale of the lies, the extraordinary fraud that he was able to pull off, to discovering that, and then thinking, oh gosh, he's obviously been through so much, something's caused these lies. Like, why is he lying to me? Like, I need to talk to him and find out why he's lying. And then the third day, I had done a deep dive online and discovered stories that other women had told about their abusive relationships, which included extraordinary lies like this. And it wasn't obviously just the lies that made me like put two and two together. It was the pattern of the relationship, which we have been talking about, the speed, the love bombing, the gaslighting, the coldness, and the strange personality kind of contrast, and also the fact that I did, by unpicking the lies, realize that every single lie was tailored to make me feel something about him. It wasn't just someone lost in delusion. Those lies were targeted. So by the third day, I was terrified of him. I had seen the pattern through other women talking about the relationships. I knew what was coming. The build up, they build you up and they take you down. And I was lucky in that I was actually I'd left the country that I was living in to come home for Christmas. And during my stay at home, the patterns of his behavior were more obvious. And this is often the case when you're in an abusive relationship. The easiest way to see what's going on is to apparently see from the corner of your eye, rather than to have them in front of you. It's impossible to get to the truth when someone is as manipulative as these people can be. You can't see the truth. They've got you. But when you're away from them, you see them from a distance, it's much easier to see the tactics that are going on. And it was a matter of just questioning. So I'd never doubted anything he told me. And for some reason, I started doubting what he was telling me. And I pulled at one thread and everything came crashing down. The lies were so bold. I mean, his ex-wife who had died, I found her on Facebook. I didn't contact her. I didn't want to cause more problems for her. But yes, that was one of 1,000 lies I could very easily discover. They were so brazen. It was so odd that he thought he could get away with that. But if I'd been in front of him, he may well have lied his way out again by saying that he was damaged and getting on my heartstrings. So I was very lucky that I was away from him. So it happened very fast. And from then on, it was a matter of working out the safest way to end it without causing anger Anyway, so that's an overview of how I got out, and it was highly lucky because I happened to be away from him. Nick, your story is very different, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, we every time I wanted to leave or felt that it needed to end, let's say that, which started, I think, quite early on after maybe the first 6, 7, 8 months. I was thinking, well, look, I need to leave if this doesn't improve. And then, you know, she would come back and she'd be great, and we would stay together for another 3 or 4 months. There were times towards the end where she would be packing her bags literally on a weekly basis. I would say 4 weeks in a row, she would pack her bags and hang around long enough for me to basically convince her to come back. The interesting thing was I went. There were 2 times when she went away and when I went away on holiday, and the first, when she went away on holiday, it was a year into the relationship, and it was really it was crazy because I'd literally just spent a lot of money on a holiday for both of us because she didn't have money, and by chance she got some money and like from her job, some bonus, and decided to actually spend that money on her own holiday with a friend. And I did find that weird that she didn't think, well, you know what, I should really give this back to Nick to pay for, you know, my share of this other holiday that he's paid for. But anyway, when I was away, I had a great time. I was out all the time and having a lot of fun. And she came back, and I didn't realize this until a long time afterwards. But she asked my roommate. We all lived together, and she's like, "What was Nick doing? What was he up to, etc., etc." And she just kept quizzing him about everything that I was doing and why, and how did I have so much fun without her, and none of it made sense. And found it really weird that she seemed really upset that I had a good time while she wasn't around. Not that I was doing anything mischievous, but I just was happy, you know.
Yeah.
And she found that very confusing.
Yeah.
And when I went away and had laser surgery, and she was calling me up all the time and being over caring and being like, oh, I'll come straight on the next flight to help you, and it was very over the top, but it was nice to have, you know, someone that cared that much, I guess. But I didn't think anything untoward other than that. But actually, when we went away, finally, after 21 months of the relationship, and the abuse really kicked up in the last 5 months, culminating in that trip. And that trip, I found myself basically not saying anything, because I was terrified that everything I said would be misunderstood and misinterpreted. She basically kept threatening to return home. She was like, I'm not having fun anymore. I want to go home. You should stay here. I'm ruining your fun. I want you to continue having fun. So I'll go home. You stay here. And she knew that, you know, it would be really, I wouldn't like that to go on a trip together and for her to tell me she's not enjoying it, tell me that we changed the trip so many times, even from the first day. She told me she had a panic attack and that she would be bedridden for a week. And that was the first 2 days we were there of a month holiday.
Oh, God.
Yeah, we changed destination because she didn't want to take malaria tablets, even though she knew that we needed to take malaria tablets a long time before. The day before we even left, she told me that she didn't want to go and that I should go without her. And it all culminated in a point where she basically, I was on the phone to my mom and explaining, the trip and saying that wasn't really working out so well, and she seemed upset with me all the time, and I didn't really know what to do. And after about an hour of talking to her, my ex came and found me and like, who are you talking to? And of course, it's difficult when I say, oh, it's my mum, because that opens up another thing. She doesn't like me talking about the relationship to my mum. So I said, oh, I'm just talking to my mum, because I found it very difficult to lie.
Yeah.
And she's like, were you talking about us? And I was like, yeah, I was just saying, about the trip and how nice it was. And then she's like, yeah, but you're on the phone for like over an hour and a half. You can't be just talking about that. I'm like, yeah, she had like an issue that I'm trying to help her with back home. And she just kept, and then she just kept quizzing me and quizzing me and quizzing me until the point where I was like, she was like, she broke up with me that night. She broke up with me. And then basically played the victim all night. She slept on the floor. I said, look, you sleep on the bed, I'll sleep on the floor. No, I'll give you the covers. No, I don't understand you. What are you doing? She'd say to me, leave me alone. And then the next morning we go and have breakfast, and she just stayed around long enough for me to sort of be like, look, I feel so guilty about leaving her in the middle of nowhere on a holiday where I know she gets anxious and panic attacks. And I just said, look, I'm sorry. It was my fault, maybe. I was this, I was that. And then we kind of got back together again. And it was only about 4 days later when we moved to a different country. I took her to Universal Studios. It was all about fear, Universal Studios, with like Shrek trying to get eaten by a monster and Jurassic Park with dinosaurs trying to kill you. And she couldn't take it. And she flipped out, called her therapist. And the therapist basically said, look, if it's not working and he doesn't accept you for who you are, you should break up with him. So she did. And in that moment, I just had such clarity in what was going on. And I couldn't disagree with her that this is, she said, if you don't accept me the way I am, then we should end this. And I couldn't argue with that. I'm like, you know what, you're absolutely right. And then I called my mom and told her, and I felt terrible. I felt real shame that we broke up on holiday, and that that we were coming back separately or whatever it was. And she, spent long enough to leave. Again, a long time leaving, and then I and then she called me and she said, "Oh, I'm having a panic attack. Can I come back?" And I said, "Sure, no problem." But I was so clear in myself that we were breaking up. This was not getting back together. And I said to her, "Look, I'm going home tomorrow. You can come back with me, or you can stay here. It's up to you. But this is over. It's finished." And I guess that leads on maybe to the next point of, once we both decided that it was the end, how did we communicate that, or how did we cut ties?
Well, I was luckily like with my family away from him, who was in a different country, when I knew it was over. And there was a very short, very horrible period of, I think, what I've since read about being cognitive dissonance, which is when, because I'd lived one relationship and then discovered it was something else entirely, like 180 degrees the opposite of what I thought I was living. And reconciling the truth with what I now knew, with this love of my life, who I thought I was in love with, reconciling the truth between those two situations was really hard and really odd. So it's like you've got two people in these two realities in your head, And in order, after, I mean, I think it was quite quickly I realized, I mean, as soon as I worked out that he was a mentally disordered, antisocial personality disorder is what I believe he has, which covers narcissism and sociopathy. And I knew obviously it was over. And I also knew there was no point in talking to him about it, because I knew that he would be able to manipulate me around it. I knew as soon as I was face to face with him, even on Zoom, I didn't want to talk to him on Zoom either. So I pulled back, and I wanted to like not create anger in him, because he was a personality that throughout I knew he had the potential to be extremely angry. He had let me know throughout our relationship that he could hurt me. He never physically hurt me, but he did imply that he could. I remember like when we used to play fight or whatever, he would very quickly hurt me. So I stopped doing that, obviously. It just wasn't a part of our dynamic. And I'd seen his rage, which I always put down as like as a part of his autism, but I had seen his rage and his utter kind of deep dislike for some people. So I knew that I had to be careful in how I got out. And also I wanted to go back to my life in this country. My whole life was there, like everything, my business, my friends, my dog, everything was there. So my main aim was to get out peacefully so that I could go back to life there. And I actually went to see a psychiatrist who was a specialist in these disorders, these personality disorders, not for myself, but to ask his advice as to how to manage the situation to get out of it. And I went with my parents. So sweet. I literally have my parents thank for everything. We all went together. I had this extraordinary session with the psychiatrist, told him the story, and he agreed this person sounded disordered. And his advice initially was, if you don't have to go back, don't go back. He helped me write this letter, this email that I would send to this guy to break it off. And it was an extraordinary letter. He dictated it into a dictaphone, and he was an ancient, where is he from? I think he was German. He was really old, and he dictated this very long-winded letter that I should send to him to break up with him. I think the only bit I changed was that he said, because I should say that I was leaving, because I was worried that he was going to come to the UK to get me, because he was actually meant to visit me that Christmas. And I was very worried that he'd come, because I didn't want him to come. And so he said, you should write, well, me and my family are actually traveling to the continent this Christmas. I changed that bit, but just to Europe. I thought it was quite funny. But I sent this email exactly as he dictated it. And actually, I asked him about the long-winded nature of it. And he said that was deliberate, because he never once said, you're a liar and I don't want anything to do with you. It was all like, I have my set of morals and values, and I don't feel like I can continue in a relationship where these are not respected. It was all very soft. And that was deliberate in order for this guy to not have anything to hang his anger on, like to not have nothing to kind of pick on and be furious about. And in a way, I mean, it worked. I didn't get any abusive emails back or anything. I got some very odd emails back. Part of my realization that he wasn't who he was is that this guy had told me he was very highly educated at some very top international institutions, but his written English, although English was not his first language, it wasn't even a matter of, he couldn't construct sentences. His emails were like one long sentence, and they were very confusing, which made it clear he had not been highly educated, because I'm sorry, even if it's not in English, you can construct a sentence nicely, and if you're highly educated. So anyway, I would send that email. I got some very long-winded ones back. He sent me this poem that he'd written apparently, and I Googled the poem, and it was like a really famous poem. And he'd like changed one line at the bottom to make it relevant to us, honestly. So I got a lot of these weird emails, and then I got phone calls with that were like dead at the end, like he never spoke. So and then, but I got them for quite a long time. I was basically waiting in the UK to see if I could go back to my life, and it was like 3 months, and I was still getting weird emails. He was posting some horrible stuff online on his Instagram that was very unlike the person I knew, like very horrible allusions to me and to my character, calling me awful names, which is not something I recognized as the person I knew at all. So it was all becoming very clear that he was dark. And in the end, I realized that I was too scared of him to go back. So I ended up, my whole life turned upside down, and I had to rebuild everything in the UK. I mean, I was plenty of good reasons to be back here, but it was very hard. And eventually the emails petered out. He slithered away from my community of friends in this other country, luckily, so I didn't have to worry about him doing it to anyone else that I knew, at least. But just finally, one quick thing. I do think the thing I felt at the time that was very dark is that I knew that my best chance of going back to my life was if he targeted someone else and moved on and did this thing to someone else, which is horrible. And I think that's a problem in our society, is that I was too scared to tell my community in that country about who he really was, because I didn't want his anger directed at me, and I didn't want anyone else to be in danger. I didn't want anyone to confront him. I was worried. I am really scared of this man, and I didn't know what he was capable of. I mean, it sounds like a film or something, but he was a chef, and he had a thing about knives. He had a thing about fire and knives was his thing. And I just was so scared of him. But luckily he did slither away from my community and back to the Jewish community, where I don't know what he's doing now, but yeah, that's the end. And I just stayed here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it worked. Thanks to that psychiatrist, that funny old psychiatrist. He didn't have the means I don't think he had the means to travel here anyway. But he pretended to come. Oh, sorry, just quickly tell you another thing. He pretended to fly. He used to do this even when we were together, which I realized was another part of his lies. He would post on Instagram about business trips to Europe, because we were outside Europe, for like big restaurants hiring him and flying him out to the States or to Europe. And he never left the country. He was probably in his bedroom, and he would post these like generic photos of airports, and being like, oh, here I am in Madrid airport. He was never there. I know enough about his lies to know that he doesn't have the means to be doing that. And I know that he wasn't a famous chef being flown everywhere. So extraordinary. But luckily I got out, quite easily.
Yeah, it's amazing how how you were lucky to be in a different country.
Yeah. Leave him there, because lots of people have stalkers down the road, and what can they do?
I think and I think this is a very common thing that I see or read about with when you break up with abusive people is this. I think it's from the narcissism within them that they can't leave you alone, they can't take it, that it's over. And I think this is ultimately the reason why I needed my abuser to break up with me, because I needed I needed basically that safety net saying, well, hold on, you broke up with me. You don't have any reason to be angry at me because you were the one that did the breaking up.
Wow. So you were actually fearful of ending it when it was bad.
I was terrified of her. I didn't speak for 4 days in that week before we broke up. When we broke up the first time, she made me call her therapist, my mum, and her sister to tell her that it was my fault. and that I was the reason why we broke up the first time, and that I would be seeking therapy when I get back. And she wrote out what I needed to say to my mum as part of that. She used to put her, like you talk about play fighting, she used to put her hands around my neck and say, if I do this now, no one will ever know.
Oh my God, Nick, stop it. Oh my God, yeah. Don't play fight with a psychopath. Don't. Lesson.
She would tell me stories of people in her neighbours who would go out and kill people, and that if she needed to, they would do whatever she wanted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she knew where I lived. She and I think that I was terrified that, like you say, of telling other people like really what happened, because I didn't know who I could trust. I didn't know who on good terms with her. I didn't know who still felt good about her. It'd be my word against hers, and she knows where I live, and it wouldn't be. It's not so easy for me to move country to escape that.
No.
And so yeah, I was terrified of her. The funny thing is, you mentioned that you hoped that he would find someone else pretty fast, so he would leave you alone. The irony was that my ex found one of my best friends to get with very quickly after, and I think he did me a massive favor with that, because she had a new focus, which wasn't me. But I think the most interesting thing, so when I got back home from this trip, and I insisted that we sit together on the plane, because I know that she suffers from panic attacks and she doesn't fly well, and she's scared of flying. So I said, look, you know, we really should sit together. My job, I thought, was just to make sure she got back to the country, and then that's it. I leave her alone.
Yeah.
You know, go our separate ways. And I remember, like, on the last flight, so it'd take a few flights, like 4 a.m, she like punched me really hard in the arm and was like, "Can't believe you did this. I can't believe you broke up with me. I can't believe you made us sit next to each other. Why did you do this?" And then she's like, "If we were married, that things would be so different, and that we wouldn't break up so easily, and and my family's apartment that we lived in would be hers, and things like this." And I was just like, "Sorry, no one's forcing you to sit here. If you want to move, go sit somewhere else."
Yeah. Sounds like she was like proposing marriage.
But that's the reason why we broke up ultimately, is because I told her I couldn't marry her while we had these problems.
Yeah.
And then when we got home, I called my friend at 8 a.m. I was like, "We broke up. How do I get her out of my life? I need her gone, completely out." And I literally packed her bags and told her to come and pick them up, or I could drop them off that day. I needed it out immediately. And her friend came, and her friend, who I know, and my friend was here also. And there was a moment where the three of us looked at each other, my friend, her friend, and me. And it was very clear that this was not the first time this had happened for these sorts of reasons. And luckily, my friend gave me some very good advice of don't be on the phone to her, don't answer her calls, any message, don't agree to meet up with her, any message that comes on WhatsApp, forward it to my friends and we'll answer it together, make sure it's just very personal, very just to the point. But she had a hold. She knew how to continue to manipulate, and you know, that one time where she basically kept saying, we need to meet, we need to talk about it, we need to talk about next steps, need to talk about how we break up, we need to talk about how, when we delete each other from social media, we need to talk about whatever it was we needed to talk about. And I was like, no, it's over. There's nothing to talk about. But I was very lucky that she left me alone very quickly, actually, because she had my friend now to be with.
So, I mean, the thing that changed was something did finally shift mentally for you, and it's interesting to think, like, I wonder what it was exactly, you know, like, that set you free finally. Maybe just
it definitely was in that. It definitely was in that hotel room when she broke up with me for the second time, and I just remember it so clearly that it was like a spell had been lifted, and I could see exactly what was going on.
Wow.
Much clarity. I was just like, wow. I can see, like, it's like you've got the cheat code, and you're just like, I can see everything. I know what she's going to do, I know exactly what she's going to say.
It's like the Matrix lifting.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. But I was still terrified of her, and I didn't tell my friends what happened. I just said we broke up, didn't say why. I didn't say why for a long time. It was, you know, it was very fearful of her. I think I still am fearful of her. Don't want to ever see her again.
No.
But she's here, you know. She works in the same building as my friend and another friend of mine.
God, I don't know how you cope with that, actually. I don't know how you cope with the potential to see her. Nick, I'm going to have to...
we leave it there?
Yeah. We already have plans for the next one.
Exactly. So the fourth and final video will be recovery and aftermath, which for me, I think is actually the most interesting one right now.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Hattie, for joining, and we'll do that one at some point in the future. And thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.